This video is going to walk you through some of the components of the Comprehensive Evidence-Based Practice paper. It's due at the end of week 12, but you're encouraged to start it as early as possible and kind of add to it as you go. A lot of the components that are found within this paper are things you've done in earlier weeks, or if you're looking at this at the beginning of the semester, things you will be doing as you go along. So there is a template for this paper. If you go over to the modules page, you scroll down to week 12, you'll see that there's the EBP Paper template. That is already APA formatted. It already has all the headers in there, primary and secondary headings, everything like that. You don't have to use it, but that should save you a fair amount of time, so I'd strongly encourage that. So when you go to this paper, again, I always encourage you to look at the unit outcomes and the competencies. When you get into the description, you can look at that as well, but down here is the real big meat and bones of it all. So you're going to be typing a paper. There's not an exact length that you must reach. Often having a minimum amount of pages can stress students out, and having a maximum often leads to just filler words for the sake of trying to hit a page count. So there are some guidelines in here as you look down a little further that'll show you like approximate lengths. These are not exact lengths. So if you look here, lengths indicated, next to each of the headings are guidelines and not exact parameters. This could vary some depending on the person, but it ends up being quite a few pages, especially based on the literature review section. You do need to make sure that you're following all the APA 6th edition guidelines. Make sure you use your book for that. Part of this you've already been doing throughout your semester. Again, if you use the template, the cover page is templated in there, as well as the page headers and headings within the paper. You do need to make sure you're using a program such as Grammarly to really check your grammar and spelling. If you're not familiar with Grammarly, it's a free program that you can put on your computer, and not only for papers but for emails and everything you type, it can help catch grammar and spelling as well as punctuation errors. You also need to make sure that you're following paragraph construction guidelines. That means not a single sentence and not one paragraph that lasts for like a whole page. Also, make sure your citations and references are correct. There's quite a bit of emphasis on this when it comes to points. So you're going to concisely address the following. You do need to have an introduction and a conclusion in your paper. Now, introductions and conclusions end up often looking fairly similar. The introduction is talking about this is what will be discussed in the paper. The conclusion kind of wraps up what was discussed in the paper. And it's recommended to often put the introduction and conclusion in at the end, after you've done the main part of the paper, so you know exactly how you're framing it afterwards. Trying to type the introduction first may result in you having to go back and rework the introduction after your paper's done. Let me be very clear for a second. When you look at the 6th edition APA formatting and the guidelines, this is not to be done in first person. This paper needs to be done not in first person. So, if, for example, you say something about, well, just a second, let me get not too far ahead of myself, but if you have the introduction, you're going to put your PICO question. That can just be one sentence long. But when you get to the selection procedure down here, this goes back to those searches that you did earlier in the semester with the Boolean phrases and what you found based on each phrase. You found 32 results. But it's important to not word it as I type for diabetes and insulin, not medication, whatever it is. It's important to not word it as I did that, but more a search was conducted for diabetes and insulin, not medication. So make sure that you're not using first-person language in any of this. This is an academic paper. So this selection procedure right here goes back to the portion of your class where you did your searches and how many results you found. The literature review is the biggest part. When it says 1 to 3 pages, it's incredibly rare for it to be 1. Most people's will be anywhere 2 to 3, sometimes 4 pages. What you're doing in the literature review, this is heavily based on your annotated bibliography, and you're looking for themes. So in your annotated bibliography, there's the section where you talk about the summary of the article, and then there's a section where you talk about how that applies to your exact PICO question. What you're doing is you're looking for themes that pop out that are shared by multiple articles. Now, not every single article is going to cover the same things, and this is kind of like a layering effect. Even as you look for articles for your annotated bibliography, not every article is going to cover your topic exactly. Some of them cover different components and kind of overlap to make the bigger bubble of your topic. In fact, if you find one article exactly on what you're looking at, 100% overlap, then you're not looking at something new, you're just replicating. So I encourage you to find something a little different than what's out there. You need to be looking for something where you're coming up with your own surveying evidence for how you think practice could potentially be shaped. So when you look for these themes, look to see what they have in common. You may find that there's some aspects that it's not in common. You may find that out of your articles, one of them really kind of contradicts what the others are saying. That's fine. You can have that in there as well. If you go to the template for this paper, let me click over to it really quickly, make sure to show you that as well. Let me expand to the correct spot. So when you look at this again, there's the header already there, all of your headings, as well as everything in red. You need to make sure that you're putting your stuff there and not leaving the red font. Also make sure it's changed to black font. May seem redundant, but this has been an issue in the past. So make sure you're having everything where it needs to go. But you see these themes. Don't leave the word theme. If these are the themes that emerge, and this can often be like a 2 or 3 word title. This is a heading. This isn't a whole big sentence, but you put the paragraph after it that goes with it. So if one of the themes, as you're looking at interventions and you find a theme of family support helps patient outcomes, then family support would be your theme. And then the paragraph underneath it could talk about family support as a recurring theme found in the literature that provides evidence of whatever outcomes as seen in, and that's where you can start putting like as seen in Harper and Smith study on such and such. So you're going to start all the articles that share that theme, you will be talking about within that theme. And then you'll go on if there's another theme that emerged, a third theme that emerged. And then this bottom category is for exceptions. If you have an article that really doesn't follow everything else, you can put that down there as well. So make sure you're addressing these multiple themes as well as the exception to those themes. And then your conclusion down here as well. Again, this is the document that you can load. I highly recommend it being loaded early on so that you can kind of chip away at it as you go. So make sure that you have your references in there. That reference page is pretty important. If you look down, there is a very hefty rubric. Now, I know that may seem a little overwhelming at first, but it's actually for your benefit. It gives you a very clear indication of what's being looked for in each section and what the points are that are associated. This is 15% of your overall grade, and the papers are graded using this rubric, where the paper's pulled up next to this rubric and literally just clicking to show what met in each category. And so please make sure you look at the format specifications, your intro and conclusion, research question, selection procedures, the literature review. It's worth 5 points. It's 5% of your overall grade in this course. That's a full letter grade associated with the literature review. It's a really important component in evidence-based practice. Your references are worth 3 points, and your in-text citations are worth 2. Now that may seem really heavy as far as if you don't address in-text citations and references properly, you can lose 5 points. But I encourage you to think of it on the opposite side of you get 5 points just for following those references and in-text citations. You've been working on these since week 1. They're in your book. They're in other resources. So this shouldn't be too hard to address. And in fact, if you look at the book and you take the time to pay attention to that little detail, that's 5 points you automatically get just for paying attention to the mechanics of APA. So you're encouraged to go through this, start adding as you go. Make sure you're synthesizing. In your literature review, if you have it as topic 1, then topic 2, then topic 3, then topic 4, like, sorry, not topics. If you have it as Article 1 says this, then Article 2 says this. That's not what you're looking for. It needs to be synthesized. It needs to be by those themes and not like just smashing all of your annotated bibliography together. This isn't a book report where you just keep doing each one separately. You need to make sure that it is synthesized in order to get your full point. So please be aware of that as well. If you have any questions, please reach out.